Before I introduce anybody today, picture the person your farm, your operation cannot run without. Now, picture their chair empty tomorrow morning. Can somebody access the accounts? Can somebody make the payroll? Can somebody explain what the farm owes and to who and why? Can somebody make the next decision? Does the family know what happens now? If those answers live inside one person's head, we could argue that the farm is not prepared. It might be profitable. It might own a lot of land. From the road, it might look darned good. It might look bulletproof. But one empty chair could stop the whole thing. That's what we're here to talk about today. I'm Dan Aberhart. This is Growing the Future, Western Canadian Agriculture's foremost live briefing platform and foremost AI training accelerator. By the end of the hour, you're going to know these three things. Whether somebody else knows the financial truth, whether the farm can run without one person, and whether the next generation is actually being prepared to lead. And if one of those answers is no, that's where the work can begin. That's the good news. So if you're watching on YouTube, hit like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you can join us live from there and comment there. Share this with the family whose whole farm still lives inside of one person's noggin. Thank you so much to Hammond Realty for making this channel possible. God bless. We got one of your troops here today. Thank you as well to MNP. You might have heard of them, MNP, the little accounting firm here in Canada, and Crop Aid Nutrition, soil health experts that are helping our soils at the farm stay healthy and exceed. And Convergence Conference 2027. I want to see you all there. Go to convergence.ag. So we're live on Zoom. We're live on YouTube as usual. You can put your questions, comments into the chat. We're going to be here for about an hour. This conversation got rolling when Wade heard Jace Young's story and said, you know, Grandpa lost his farm because Grandpa wasn't prepared. And Jolene has her own story too. So we have with us today a really awesome, esteemed panel. I'm proud to present to you folks. Jace Young is the founder and CEO of Legacy Farmer. He's obviously scaled the company since the days when he typed in the logo on a PowerPoint. I was listening to Tracy Burnett's podcast this morning. I thought that was a funny story. So great entrepreneurial story. His family built a major Western Kansas farm operation and then lost it later while working at two community banks. Jace read his own grandfather's refinancing applications that must have been visceral. Welcome to the show for the first time, Jace.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here and excited to share the story and share any value I can give people that'll help them, you know, not go through what our family went through and what so many family farm operations are going through today.
I love it. And you're doing great work out there, and it must have tremendous value because it sounds like you're helping a lot of folks. So that's wonderful. And so we wanted to add some more color to the story here in Canada and different perspectives. It all blends together. Trust me, it's a beautiful mix. Jolene Bolding is Manager Advisory Services at Farm Credit Canada, and you have your own story too. You work with Western Canadian farm families while they still have room to make a transition work, hopefully. Welcome to the show, Jolene.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, it's going to be awesome. Yeah, no, it's going to be great. Last but not least, Wade Berlinic. He is an associate broker, ag exits and acquisitions strategies with Hammond Realty. They built a beautiful machine to help all this wealth in Western Canada transition down. Wade sees what happens when those decisions have been waiting too long and the land finally goes up for sale, but he also helps folks before that stage. Welcome, Wade.
Hey, good morning, Dan. Great to be here. You bet. It's a neat industry. It's a neat thing that we're trying to help folks like Jolene and Jason and bring that conversation forward and get the farm families to say, hey, let's have that conversation and be prepared for when the inevitable or unexpected happens.
Well, let's ask the audience a little bit where they're at. We always love audience participation on these shows. So where do you, oh no, that's the wrong poll. Sorry. I will circle back on the polls. That's a green marketing poll. Is there no, there is the empty chair. I'm going to launch that one. Green marketing's tomorrow, folks. Tune in for that one. That's what I love about live. Anything can happen. That makes it super exciting. So, but Jace, we want to start with your story. Maybe looking at your grandfather's refinancing applications at the bank is, way down the road, but give us some context for this conversation and why you're passionate and why you built the business that you did based on what happened with your family and you're trying to prevent for others.
Yeah, so the operation I grew up on was in a small town in western Kansas called Tribune. My granddad started it back in the 1950s with no capital or anything like that, and over a 55-year period built it into a 10 to $15 million a year operation. I grew up on the feed yard side of the operation, so 14 houses had feed yard. Grew up working cattle for a majority of my life, and then we had obviously the farming side of the operation, which was 5,000 acres of ground, and then also a grain elevator facility. And my granddad had 5 kids, and all of them were involved inside the operation. And then all of us cousins were kind of spread out too. So you guys can imagine in a small 900-person community, an operation of that size goes down. It really kind of has a big impact on the entire community, unfortunately. But that happened in the summer of 2005. So everything went belly up financially. My granddad essentially, kind of the simple way I like to put it is he was trying to run an operation in 2005 based on 1975 principles and strategy, if you know what I mean there. So he had a few bad years there and ended up having to shut everything down. And, small community and stuff like that. The banker that had to foreclose on him was his brother. So when you just think about just being in small communities and just the tension and things that can cause there, my passion for what we're doing today actually came after the farm operation went under because of what I saw my parents go through. So my parents are very old school. They got married when they were 15 and 17 and got pregnant with my brother about 3 months later. And they never left the family farm operation. So my dad graduated high school a year early. They went straight out to the feed yard and lived in a trailer house out there and just started, starting to build their lives. But when I had to go through and, watch them file Chapter 7 bankruptcy, help them move out of the house, our country house that they'd raised their family in for 30 years and walk away from a life that they sacrificed so much to build. That's where, it forced me to grow up really fast. And again, I was in high school at that time. So it just made me realize the importance of, or at least what can happen when you don't know where you're at financially, when you don't ask questions, when you don't have a game plan or not running different scenarios there. Because essentially, my dad, he started riding pins when he was 5 years old, and he had to walk away from the farm operation at 45, literally with nothing. Right. And so that's where my passion for what we're doing, it's more about the people in the industry than the industry itself. It's because I look at a lot of customers today and it reminds me of my parents. These are good people with good principles and that want to work hard and be able to pass something on to the next generation. And that's kind of what we're fighting for. So I'll stop there, see if there's any questions on what I can elaborate on.
Well, and the poll came back here about the empty chair. If the main operator could not come back tomorrow, could the farm keep running? And I know there's a variety of things that could happen, but really it's just about adversity. What percentage of farms, Jace, do you think, like given the amount of farms that you work with,
Yep,
can keep going if they lose that key man or some adversity hits the farm that maybe they're not prepared for?
So the farm may be able to keep going, but it's going to be set back decades or even an entire generation as well. Because when you think about it, the same mistakes are going to be made generation after generation that the prior one made because there's no game plan there. But actually with the debt levels that we're dealing with today, I would say less than 5% are actually going to be able to get through it and continue moving forward because so many people have been so over leveraged in the US alone. Yeah,
that's very interesting. Well, we had 28% of the audience said that they could. We had 61% said yes, but with difficulty, and 6% said no, and 6% maybe said, I honestly don't know. And I think that's a vulnerable, honest place to start from, where some people are starting from. Jolene, what are you seeing in the industry as far as, preparedness and what does Jace's story bring up for you? I know you have your own story of
Yeah, no, it was really interesting. I read your story, listened to you a little bit, Jace. And I feel like we're similar in the fact that we're both not on the family farm for different reasons. My dad started a ranch in northern Saskatchewan at 20 years old, newly married, no running water, all of that fun stuff with lots of pretty big dream. And I was the youngest of three girls on the farm on the ranch. So we were the hired men and we were the truck drivers and the bale haulers and all the things. Fast forward a few years, education was really important in our family. So I went to Alberta to get, education in finance and started working as an ag banker as well. And my parents were really young. My sisters married farmers from the area, so they were established. And I had an idea that I would probably take over the family ranch. And we didn't have the conversation because my parents weren't even 50 years old. So it wasn't something we felt we needed to talk about. And they told us one Thanksgiving, we were approached by a realtor. They have a buyer that is really looking to expand, and we feel like this is an opportunity. There's so much work to be done here. All the fencing needs to be redone. It felt like a burden. It was early 2000 when that happened, and they'd sold the farm. They made the decision before telling us even. So it wasn't. So where my passion for transition conversations is really have the conversation, get what's on your mind on the table before it's too late. And I don't know if the situation would be different even if we would have had it, but at least I would have had the opportunity. So for me, I feel like the preparedness is the fact that only 12% of Canadian farms have a transition plan. It means that we're not prepared. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Wade, what comes up for you after you hear these stories? You must see this a lot too. You're on the land side, but you're trying to work with folks before they get to the point where something's forced against their will.
Yeah, so I listened to Jace's I think it was the 45-minute podcast about how my grandpa lost his farm over one summer or something like that. And one of the things that really hit me, having come from a farm family, and I farmed myself out of high school for a number of years before I got into what I'm doing now. One of the things that really hit me listening to Jace's story was when he came to understand why grandpa was the way he was. And I thought that was a pretty grown up, pretty cool recognition. Instead of having the blame game of, oh, grandpa, what were you thinking? It was, oh, hold on, why were you thinking this? And boy, did that hit home to the way my father thought. And it was just like the parallel was like, just, wow, they must have went for coffee together, even though they live, 1,000 miles apart.
That's what I was wondering, Jace, is why with your grandfather, why did he end up in that situation? You said it, everybody has great intentions, right?
Yep.
What happened?
I think ego and pride starts to play a part of it, right? Because in the 50s, he started it with nothing, right? And by the time we got to the 70s, obviously before the tough 80s there, making good money, profitable, big operation, lots of employees, the ego starts to build over those years, where you get to a point where you're not going to listen to anybody. You're not going to take any feedback. You know what you're doing. And that's where he got caught in 2000s.
Oh, so it was almost he was a victim of his own success, I guess.
Agreed, 100%, and that's something I'm learning and trying to remind myself of on a constant basis here. Because even with growing legacy farmer, I'm grateful for the experience, and I'll tell you, Wade, the only reason I even got that understanding of really thinking through why my granddad was the way he was is because I started to experience certain things and having to build my own business from nothing, right, and having no help, no fallback, and I can see how once he had some success, that ego and that pride start to build up a little bit, and nobody's going to know the business better than he is. He knows, everything that should be done and that type of stuff there. And I truly believe that's what led to the downfall. And so
I wonder, Jace, if this is a perfect recipe for disaster in a way, because you talked about the record debt, and yet balance sheets in the last 25 years on farms have grown tremendously. And one could argue, hey, we're doing awesome. We're growing our wealth. The value of land's going up. In general, a lot of farms have been super successful, and yet there's all these underlying currents. Is that a hidden danger, Jace?
Oh, absolutely. Because they're not their assets aren't growing because of true profits hitting the balance sheet every year. It's coming from outside factors like appreciation just in land value.
Jolene, is that landing for you? What's your take on that? You've got numbers there at FCC. You've got the 30,000-foot view.
Yeah, no, it's definitely very similar. The balance sheets are growing and the leverage is growing as well. Appreciation in land is, been over 9% in Canada across the countries, like for quite a few years, right? So there's opportunity to grow, but if you're not selling that asset, you still have to cash flow. And I think that's a key risk for us in Canada too. You have to be able to afford the payments on that high price land.
Cash flow.
Cash flow.
I think that's if you're playing Monopoly, whether it's farming or Monopoly, you need that cash flow. Wade, you're talking to producers all the time. Are you seeing that? Are folks open to conversations, or maybe only after some proverbial shit hits the fan?
I think that on occasion they're talking to their advisors individually, but never as a group. I see that. But, I would say 70 to 80% of the farms I go to don't even have any advisors in place. Like they haven't had the conversation. And I think Jolene's story about mom and dad probably had the farm sold before they even approached the kids to tell them.
Right.
There's a perfect example. The conversation hasn't been had with the kids, let alone with the advisors to what if, or, what do we do down the road?
Jace, I'm kind of wondering with your grandfather. I didn't catch that part of the story where he had tried to do some refinancing and stuff. So what happens? There must be a moment when you think you're bulletproof, and then all of a sudden you might realize, hey, you're in deeper water here. Then you might be able to swim back to shore. What happens at those stages? And is that when you typically run into your folks that you're trying to help? They come to you when the pain of something that's happening is greater than the pain of just keep doing what they're doing?
Yeah, but it's not always financial though either, right? There's some people to where maybe they're trying to figure out what's the succession plan need to be, right? And the first stage of any succession plan is knowing where you're at foundationally from a financial standpoint, right? So you can even know what you're passing on. So we have a lot of different operations, from doing 500K a year in revenue, clear up to our biggest one is 50 million, with a range of different problems in between. So not everybody's coming to us because they're financially strapped or anything like that. We have some really successful operations where again, there's that key person risk where everything is in dad's head. And there's, a $10 million operation that the kids and everybody else involved has no idea where anything's at. So they need that help with that structure and that organization and everything there. But to go back to my granddad and the reports that I read at the two banks that I worked at, each one of them was 15 to 20 pages, but it was just interesting to see how many things were exposed in those documents that were hidden for years. Right. And so once the operation went under, once my granddad's ego was kind of killed and he was like, hey, this is what it is. All the skeletons started coming out of the closet around how many things had happened basically since 2001 that ultimately led to the downfall of the operation. And it was a long list and everything. But anyways, I share all that because I'm sitting there reading those things. And I'm like, why was action not taken in 2001? We knew the issue was there. He knew the issue was there, did not tell anybody. Even just for example, like my dad, for example, ran a 14,000 head feed yard owned by my granddad. And my dad found out the day that everything was getting shut down, the day that my granddad had to officially file bankruptcy. Why was my dad not, and my parents not, made aware of that years in advance so that they can make different plans for their family? And if you ask my dad what was one of the things he wished he would have done, it's really two things. One, he wishes he would have left Tribune, Kansas and went and did something else when he was younger, just to experience something, a different part of life. Two, I should have asked a lot more questions instead of just trusting, even if it's family and everything like that. I should have asked a lot more questions.
Well, it's easy to say, but we're humans. And I think in that position, we might have thought we could just, work our way out of it or do our best. But I'm wondering, Jace, if you could share a little bit of what you've seen of what can happen that people don't think about every day that might give us some context for, hey, if you're not there yet, maybe we should take some steps towards getting prepared. What have you seen?
Just to share kind of what happened after our family farm operation went under, you talk about just the complete separation of the entire family, right? So my granddad had 5 kids. All of us cousins, we all lived within, 5 to 10 miles of each other out in the country there, grew up together with a lot of them. After everything went under, there was, 2 or 3 of my aunts and uncles I didn't see for a decade or more after that. Complete separation, complete disconnection to the family. All the ties and everything there were broken. So, that's obviously a tough outcome there. But the other thing too, and just speaking, working with customers and stuff over the years as well, the number of customers that we've had come in, Dan, that are coming in because something unexpected happened. Dad had a heart attack or there was a farm accident, and the person, again, who knows everything about the operation, all trapped in their head, passed away. And now they're trying to figure out, one, how do I even get their estate settled? And now I'm going through this because they definitely didn't have an estate plan set up. So they're going through probate at the court and all this type of stuff, trying to get assets aligned and who's going to take care of this and everything. But then just trying to get the business game plan in place to know, okay, how was the operation running beforehand and how can we make sure this thing continues going? That's why I referenced earlier, it may not completely collapse the family farm operation, but it sets it back decades or even an entire generation, because it's basically a brand new business owner starting from ground zero, trying to learn all these things, and taking over maybe a $5 or $10 million operation.
In a very emotional state.
Absolutely.
I mean, whether it's the loss of the farm or a family member or what you thought was your reality, you're grieving. And obviously we don't think very clearly in grief. I'd love to hear from Jolene and Wade too. Wade, when we talked on the phone, you had lots of stories about different situations that really resonated for you, is why you wanted to hop on this call too.
One of the things that comes to mind listening to Jason and Jolene is a farm loss is rarely caused by one bad event. It's caused by the lack of an absence of a plan for when that event happens. And you see a lot of times, some of the things I've run into, not all that I was involved with, but that I'm aware of. There was a mother and father, it goes back, I'm going to say around 2010 or 12. They were away for the weekend and 4 young children. I think the oldest was 14. And heaven forbid, Sunday morning on the way home, mom and dad both got killed and in a car accident, so there's an extreme case. Different times where the main operator, and Jace referenced that, doesn't come home. I found out last week that 2 weeks ago, unfortunately, a client of mine passed away in a grain bin. And I know him and I know kind of his operation a little bit. I'll be shocked if there's anything in place. So these events are real. They happen every year. I could list a whole bunch more of those same types of scenarios. And the majority of the time, especially if the kids are young, then there's mom, and her job up to this point in time has been feed and wash and look after the kids and make the meals. And now dad's gone. And oh boy, not only who gets the farm and what happens to it, but who carries on tomorrow, who's marketing the grain, who's getting the crop harvested if it's that time of year. So yes, we see this lots, and seldom is there a plan in place.
Well, and it's a little bit of a question of when, not if, because on a long enough timeline, it happens to everybody. And I wanted to ask the audience too, do you have a plan? Is it written and shared? Yes, but with difficulty, or no? This is a real thing, and it made me think about my situation. I'm a non-farming sibling as well, and I give a lot of credit to my family for doing what they've done already, because I feel like we are more prepared. But if it's written down, where is it? And if it's written down, can everyone see it and have access to it? Jolene, what comes up for you when you hear these conversations? And I'm sure you're privy to lots of stories, good and bad, I guess, about success and tragedy.
Yeah, it's definitely, we hear the sad stories a lot, but the missed opportunities to, like with succession, you need to transfer both management and the estate. It's not just the estate. And if the senior gen and junior gen are working well together, those management skills, the leadership skills, the decision-making skills can actually get transitioned to the junior generation sooner. They can, give them a little bit of rope so they can make some decisions, so that if something did happen, dad's in the hospital or someone's having to make decisions without that key person, that they've got a little practice. So, if you have those conversations earlier, your advisor can actually direct you in, maybe they need to be taking some finance courses so they can understand, they're not just the sprayer operator, the combine operator, they're actually a key manager on your farm. So, even if they're not too young.
Yeah, that's a great idea and hard to do, without, in the absence of anything going wrong, like Jace's story, like everything was going good. So you just think it's going to continue doing good. I'm doing a great job. Jace, when folks come to you or when you're working with folks, how many of them have this transition plan written down? Is that kind of the first thing? I'll share the poll here, but I wanted you to take a little bit of a guess or tell us from your experience what
No,
that looks like.
it's definitely less than 5%. And I'll even add another thing in there too. At our live event we had in December in Omaha, Nebraska last year, one of the questions I asked the room, and we had about 200 or so of our customers there. I said, how many of you guys have enough life insurance to cover the debt of the farm operation? And it was very few hands up in the air, just on the men inside of the relationship. On the wives, there was a very small life insurance policy or none at all. Right. And so, anyways, I bring that up because I know of a family in Western Kansas where husband and wife, 3 young kids, and husband got killed in a farm accident. And the wife had all of a sudden had the farm operation dumped on her, $4 million in debt, over leveraged. Again, all the skeletons come out of the closet there, and all the secrets are now exposed. And imagine being in that woman's position, and then also too finding out that the husband only had $1 million life insurance policy, doesn't cover even a very big portion of the debt there. And so I think about that too, and just the amount of risk that puts on family farm operations, not even having something like that in place.
Yeah, for sure. When it comes to a plan, I'd like to think our audience is progressive. That's why they're taking time out of their busy day. So here we are. I mean, 20% have a written and shared plan. 20% say yes, there's a plan, but with difficulty. Maybe it's not clear cut, or maybe it's not shared or understood or spoken. You find out after the fact what the plan's going to be. But still, over half say no. So that's a pretty big hole of exposure for some of the things that we're talking about here, the life-changing things. Jace, when someone comes to you and maybe they don't have a plan or they have a concern or they're in a tight spot, hopefully not, but what is the first thing that you're working on getting out of their head? What are you working on there?
Yeah, foundational finances, right? Balance sheets, cash flow projections, field by field level profitability, all this stuff that runs the basic foundational pieces of the operation, and then we can build from there, right? And so, kind of going back to Jolene's standpoint, and another comment on my family operation, even if our operation would have survived, I have zero confidence that and it survived and transitioned to the kids. I have zero confidence that my dad would have had the capacity essentially and understanding to take it over and carry it on. And what I mean by that is we've had so many customers come in over the years that they're aged 55, parents unexpectedly passed away, but they've been taught, trained, and conditioned as an employee their entire life. Whereas now all of a sudden they have a $15 million operation, and all the weight, all the stress, all the massive financial risks that they have to take and manage and handle, on top of that have to lead a team. That person does not just happen overnight. That person is built over decades. So to Jolene's point around getting things structured and organized so you can bring the kids in at a much younger age, that development has to start happening, because if it doesn't, we've seen it time and time again, the 50 and 60-year-olds, they get massively exposed.
But what is the key component that makes the difference? Because you're the same blood and you're leading what? How many farms are you leading now to the financial, safeguarding, like 500 or something, I heard?
Yeah. So just around 500 or so. Yeah.
So your kin, your ancestors weren't in a position at the time to apply to their own farm, and yet you're helping so many farms. What is the difference? It's not like you have some genes that maybe they didn't, like you're the carbon copy of them, right?
Yeah, I mean, but also too, it's experiences, right? And so that's why I think the big CEOs that exist in any industry, right, that their mindset and how they handle things, but also too how they manage risk and manage emotions around leading a team there, that stuff is built through decades of challenging experiences, facing adversity over and over again, and things like that. And with a lot of our customers, and I think just it's kind of more of a parent, or being a parent more than anything. You want to protect your kids from any harm, right? Any stress, anything like that. Versus with my granddad and the CEO that he turned into, yes, his pride and his ego got to him, but I think about all the things that he went through, all the adversity, all the challenges and stuff like that. I can see why, he became the person that he did, but also why he built what he built as well.
Yeah. When did you know that you could, despite your heritage, help others?
When did I know? Well, I think that's been built over me too. So I'm coming up August 20th will be 10 years since I took the jump into entrepreneurship and left the ag bank. I would say I didn't really know probably until 4 or 5 years ago, because it took the first 3 years of my journey were terrible. I did not make any money. I struggled. I dragged my family through the mud, kind of had to earn my stripes is what I'll say. And then once we started building Legacy Farmer and the idea kind of took off from the get-go, that confidence that I had was built over probably working with like the first 200 family farm operations, right? And actually seeing results, seeing progress and seeing movement there. That builds that confidence over time. But again, that confidence was built through tough conversations, going through adversity, going through challenges and things like that, where everything we're talking about here today, biggest reason that people don't want to have the succession conversations is because it's going to be really hard. And you're going to risk some resentment in the family. You're going to risk some fighting and things there. And so a lot of it, there's having that courage. But
Yeah, I really was interested by the story of when you took your first leap. You hadn't told your wife, you just took it. Maybe it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. But isn't it funny, right? Like we, no matter how much we learn and where we're at, there's always interesting, and entrepreneurship will teach you so much, right? Starting from scratch. So yeah, we all get humbled, and it's very interesting. But I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing so much of your story, because that's where it starts, is making everybody understand you're not alone. This happens to us all. And Jolene has a story, Wade has stories, we all have stories. But back on the solution train here, we're halfway through the hour, and I want to focus on how do we triage this situation. And for the folks that want to get further down the path, or the half that haven't addressed this yet, Jolene, what are you seeing with financial acumen that Jace is talking about amongst our farmers here in Western Canada?
I think it's a hit and miss. There's success will happen if you know your baseline, you know your numbers, how profitable you are, and if you really can you afford to bring the next generation on, because that could be a conversation stopper. Right? It's like, actually, this farm isn't large enough or viable, or what other things could we be doing to subsidize the farm? What could you be doing as a side hustle so that you can stay on the farm and the farm can stay in the family? So those conversations need to happen early, and getting a clear understanding of that. Bringing your lender on early, for structuring. You don't want to, if you have opportunities in the future, you want to be able to structure your debt so that you can get to those opportunities, and not take everything over 25 years, and that you can't buy a new family minivan until then, and that's not gonna work. So getting really clear on your financial health is important.
So you're the one who's got to tell them they can't afford to drive a new Yukon to the airport? Is that conversation?
But I think those conversations are really, really important. Like Jace had mentioned in one of his other podcasts, I think that I was a very young lender as well, and having those conversations with, grown men and women, then I felt like a kid, and trying to give them advice. It really hit home that if this was my parents or my aunt and uncle, and someone didn't tell them the situation that they were in, you're really doing a disservice as an egg banker. So I think that's really important to be able to, as your lender, to be able to give a clear message to.
Wade, does that land for you what Jolene and Jace were sharing? And you, with your ag exits and strategic acquisitions there, you're helping financially to say the same thing. Like, can you afford that piece of land? Does it make sense? Is it profitable? Can you afford to succeed it down to the next generation too? Are you not?
We are and had that conversation with a long-term client just a few weeks ago, and get a call, and he says, "Hey, I've got this opportunity. I hold a right of first refusal on a package of land, and sure enough, the owner, the landlord, has got an offer to purchase, and I can match it if I want." And he says, "What do you think?" And it just so happens I know his operation quite well, and I knew the package of land he had the opportunity to buy. And it doesn't fit. He's farming it, he rents it, but from an ownership perspective, it doesn't help him down the road. It actually works against the land he already has. The land he has the opportunity to buy is like a medium soil, and the stuff he owns is premium. When he goes to market that farm, which will happen someday, the buyer wants it to all be premium. So there's an example there. Don't go and expend a bunch of money on land that, doesn't really fit. So that surprises a lot of people when they hear that we will on occasion advise people not to buy a package land, because like, well, don't you get paid by selling? Sure we do. But long term, we want the reputation of helping our clients, and that includes financial as well.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, that's great. So Jace, I come to you and I say, okay, I'm ready to learn. Mentor me. I'll be your Padawan. Financial acumen first. What's the steps through that? How do you go about that? And then what comes after that?
Yeah. So first thing we're doing with any customers that come in is breaking out the sources of income. And so we're either doing that through, basically just separating out different businesses and things there. We go through, help them build out detailed balance sheets for each individual business and then detailed cash flow projections for each business as well. Foundational documents that I know Jolene in the bank is going to want there, but also too, documents that they need to know and be updating on a regular basis. So just by going through and getting that thing set up, especially on the cash flow side of things, it never fails. Just on the cash flow, we find 50 to 100 grand of money just leaking through the bottom of the operation simply because they're not tracking it, right? And in the US, it is very common for farmers and ranchers to update their balance sheet and annual cash flow projection one time per year. And that is January to March when they got line of credit renewal coming up. And so they get those documents done, they check the box, and then they never look at it again, right? So we structure everything that way because we're trying to train a new behavior with our customers on how they're operating the business to where these things need to be updated on a monthly basis, right? So you know where the heck you're at and you know what's going on in the operation, but also too, it gives us insight into preventing problems 6 months in the future, right? Or if we have an unexpected expense that comes up in wheat harvest down here in June in Kansas and it's 200 grand, well, yeah, now that's going to change my cash flow projections drastically for the end of the year. And maybe now I don't have a big enough line of credit. And I know based on my numbers that I'm going to max out my line of credit in November when I'm in the middle of fall harvest or October. So maybe I should have a conversation with my banker today, right? And start getting ready for that, right? So we're just training this overall new behavior. And I'll stop at the balance sheet and cash flow because that's the foundational work here. Then we get into field by field level profitability, all their livestock profitability, and start kind of stepping into other sides of the operation there too.
You sound like my Dave Ramsey coach, Jay.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely. People down here have called me that too. I'm like, guys, that's great. But yeah, owning a business is the Dave Ramsey principles are not going to work for farmers or ranchers, in my opinion.
Oh, I see. No, that's hilarious. Jolene, how much better would you feel if everybody was taking this approach with Jace, if there was legacy farmer on top of the ledger when you get that fax? I don't know if you're getting faxes anymore, but
I don't think we've got a fax in a while.
Okay.
Absolutely would be fantastic. I can think of an example years ago where I talked to a farmer that we were calculating debt service, and he's like, I want to know what you're doing. Like, what are you taking from my income statement to calculate this? And the next time he came in, he had a spreadsheet, just, he'd made it himself. And he's like, hey, so this is what I figured out. And my debt service is, over 125. I think I'm good. Can we go ahead? And it's just a better feeling it gives me confidence as the lender, and it gives the customer confidence going in for that opportunity that they're looking at. So if you're working with a legacy farmer or something to help you with that, and because often the paperwork is the things that our farmers and ranchers don't like. So pay for that service and get on top of your finances sooner.
Yeah, I love this collaboration of helping folks succeed financially and the succession planning. And Wade, we talk about that a lot with you and Hammond, getting people on that transition train. It takes everybody at the kitchen table. I know having somebody like Jace in your corner coaching you on all this would make a hell of a difference long term for your viability, hey?
One of the things I found with the family dynamics, and it goes back earlier in the conversation, there's a lot of things that prevent people from having the plan in place. And we talked, Dan, you and I, about prior to the show about how people don't want the neighbor to know. Well, then you find out they don't want the kids and the wife to know. So we've had people come along and say, I'll get one of the children on the phone up and say, hey, mom and dad really need to talk to somebody. They won't open up. What do we do? Would you come out? It's amazing how you go to that first meeting, mom and dad, especially dad, usually are looking at you kind of sideways. And 2 hours later, they couldn't thank you enough for coming. And then over the coming months, sure enough, the lawyer gets involved and the accountant gets involved and a plan gets developed, and all of a sudden you're the best person that ever was. And all you did was go and sit and listen. So I guess what I'm saying is there is hope. There is a way out of this. There is a way to make things happen. And often it's by bringing in that outside person like Jace, like Jolene, maybe someone like myself. And it's amazing how the family will open up to each other when you're there, but they won't open up to each other when you're not there. So yes, there's ways out of this. There's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. And it's enjoyable work, and it's great to help these people do that. Yes, finances are a big part of it, but the personal, the emotions, the whole, I feel bad about the position we're in. That's a big part of it too. And folks, we can help with that. And Jace knows that, and Jolene knows that. And yeah, it's some pretty neat stuff. And yeah, give any one of us a call, and we'll get you down that path.
Yeah, I think any one of these folks in the room would help you find the other pieces of the puzzle that maybe you need as you go down that road. But so Jace, I'm thinking, okay, I know my numbers now, man. I love working with you. That's perfect. I got financial awareness. What is my next step? I did have a question come in here from Laura Shoemaker though. Is it enough to have an advisor on your team / accountant if the main operator doesn't have the current skill set, or do you feel that the person needs to have the financial background, Jace?
The main person can be taught the skill sets. I truly believe that, because we've had a lot of people come in, but it's that willingness to learn, right? So it goes back to like what Wade said, where the dad sitting there at the table kind of looking at you a little bit sideways, like, can I trust this person? And so it takes time to peel back those layers to be able to earn that trust and establish that trust, so you can actually have those conversations with them. And also too, just relieve or release the burden from them, right? I think a lot of people, especially coming into legacy farmer, we have a lot of spouses call, right? Or a lot of spouses get on sales calls with our team there. And typically, I mean, it's more times than not, it's the husband that is very resistant to this, because they know, and I know this as a man too, and again, dragging my family through the mud for 3 years after I left the bank and having all these financial problems and stuff there as well. As a man, it takes time to get past that hurdle, because they know once the numbers get structured and organized, all their mistakes, all their bad decisions over the past 10, 20, or 30 years are going to be laid out. They're going to be out in the open, right? So can they be taught the skill set? Absolutely. But there's got to be a willingness to learn as well.
Love that. Well, hopefully that gives you some perspective there, Laura. And that's very, very useful perspective, I think. So Jace, we're getting to the point where we're getting financially competent. We got the awareness. What do you think is step number 2 in the process to enlightenment here?
So the kind of our 5-step process that we take people through, first one is going to be position, right? And that position is around balance sheets, cash flow projections, and things like that. Then we start moving into our next phase, which is called production. And now we're starting to look at grain marketing strategy, crop insurance planning, taxes and accounting, and things like that. And we're taking people sequentially through these stages, because it all starts with, I got to know foundationally where I'm at, right? And now if I have good balance sheet, good cash flow projections, I actually have a target for, amount of revenue or overall cash flow that I want to, achieve for the year. Now I can give that to my crop insurance agent and build out my program over there, or my grain marketing person. And then if people progress there and they continue to build the operation, then we go into our profit phase, where they are going to start building a team. Right. So now we start really mapping out what the departments in their operation look like, what seats are they currently in, and what seats do they need to hire for. And a lot of people today in ag, they say, well, I want to hire people, but I can't afford to. Well, you don't know if you can afford to, because you don't have your cash flow put together. Right? You don't actually know where you're at financially. So how do you even know? So then we start moving into that conversation. And then after that, it's protection. Right? So protection is all around, okay, how's the estate plan established? How are your entities structured? Where are assets positioned inside of the entities? What's your comprehensive insurance plan? And then the last stage there is prosper. Not really any specific stages to prosper, but that's the end point that we want to get to, which means, hey, everything is well structured from finances to our estate plan at the end of the operation. Everything is in place. So it is truly everything we've built, and the journey we're taking customers on. It's a true journey, right? It's not something that happens in 6 months or a year. It's something that takes time, because once we get to, especially estate planning, like what we're talking about here, that's a year-long process of tough conversations, getting people on board, and getting everything lined up.
That is so interesting. And so you don't have people jumping around or saying, well, I want to, start here on the menu. I don't want to
Nope.
start at square one.
Now, and the methodology, guys, has been, it's just something we built with over 500 customers now. So I tested out a lot of different things. A lot of things didn't work, but if 7 of them out of 10 didn't work, I found the 3 that did, right? And we've continued to map things out there to where it doesn't matter where the operation's at. We know that we have to start at stage 1 to start forming that foundation. And also too, you just start to see things open up in the minds of the customers where they understand why we're doing what we're doing. And also too, they start to submit to the process and appreciate the process as well.
I don't farm, but I want to get to level 5. Don't you guys? Doesn't that sound like, it sounds like a board game? And that, do you gamify it a bit to keep people motivated or
sure.
help them along?
Absolutely.
How long before I reach level 5, Jace?
That's all dependent on the person, right? So the bigger operations, for example, the one $50 million operation we work with, there's 7 business partners, all family members inside of that operation, right? So try establishing an estate plan with that size of an operation. It's going to take a long time there. But the smaller operations, I mean, if they execute and they get after it and they just submit to the process, it's a couple of years and they can get things done.
What level are you guys at? I wish I had a poll for this. I'd love to know where people think that. What level are you at, Jolene? I feel like I'm at level 1 here.
I'd be further down the line than level 1.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
But what I found really interesting in this conversation is going back to, like, my team right now does the transition advisory planning, and it's not about lending anymore. So it's getting to like closer to step 5 and helping those farm families have those conversations, because like you said, often it's in one person's head what they're thinking with what's going to happen through succession, or who's going to take over the next as the next generation. And in Canada, there's $55 billion in assets that need to transfer in less than 10 years. So we have a lot of work to do. And what we've heard from our customers in Canada is that they want help. This is overwhelming. The amount of advice, the number of people that they talk to, they're going to events and listening in, and they want help getting through that. So that's what our business advisors are working to help our customers, connect. If they need capital solutions, if they need advisory services, if they need a financial planner, how can we help connect them versus, and it's, we don't sell insurance or anything. We're there to just ask good questions, find out what the real goals are, and then help make the process move forward smoothly, hopefully.
Well, and Jolene, part of the thing that I think is so critical that we talked about before the show was this is for the health of our communities. If you don't have healthy families in those communities, you don't have healthy communities that are going to go on. And that means a lot of things, the school, the rink, the store, all that good stuff. So a safe place to gather in rural country, like it's all drying up, over long term, we've had a lot of urbanization, but keeping rural life alive is a noble goal, as all of us in Western Canadian agriculture know. Wade, what level are you on?
Yeah. Maybe the middle of the road there somewhere.
Okay.
One of the things I think when the financial aspect comes, I've been doing this for 20 years, a little over 20 years. In 2005, when land values started to appreciate in Saskatchewan, some of our families that were getting out were just happy they actually had enough money to retire on now. It was like, prior to that, they didn't know if they sold their 6 quarters, if they could actually afford to retire. Well, now these farm families 20 years later, fast forward 20 years, are worth so much money. What do we do with it if we do sell it? So something that seems to be early maybe in the circle that I'm traveling is, and we're getting this from both the seller and the buyer side, maybe they retain part of the farm, because if you got all that money, what are you going to do with it anyway? And then the guy that wants to take it over can't afford to buy the whole farm at once. He doesn't have that access to that kind of capital, and if he does, he's probably going to be broke 5 years from now. So that's a new conversation that's starting, is how do we have these transitions happen where the exiting person retains part of the farm, and how do we set that up? Is it a joint venture? Are they still a farming entity? And everybody wins. They get some cash flow because they sold half the farm and they got more money than they thought they'd have just from that. And the person coming in actually can see light at the end of their tunnel and say, hey, I can do this. I can rent part of the farm, joint venture farm it with you, and you're still a farmer. So there's some pretty neat conversations coming around that mindset.
High quality problems these days. And yeah, all of a sudden there's a bunch of zeros on it from, when we left high school to when we're supposedly grown up now at 50-ish. I know on our family farm, it's the numbers have changed substantially to the point where they're hard, like they're not, it's hard to even kind of comprehend the numbers. And I put out a poll here. What does your farm need the most? Is it the financial truth, knowing the financial truth? You can't handle the truth. Is it operating without one person? Is that where you're at? Or is it preparing the next generation to lead? That's a huge one. And if the next generation's ready to lead, that becomes much easier to hand off those decisions and have those conversations. Or is it more than one of these? Is it all of them? Joshua Leffers has a great question. I think it's getting close to wrapping this up. And I have one final question for Jace about legacy, but Joshua is asking, I'm wondering if one of the barriers to getting all your advisors together is the cost. And I think everybody feels that, right? Oof. It seems like every time you step into an accountant's office, you get a bill for $2,000. In the long term, I'm sure it pays, but the advertised transition plan for a small farm is 20 to 50K. For context, the 20K would be 5% of the gross revenue of a small farm. Put this into perspective for us, Jace. Talk to me.
It's really just a simple question. What's it going to cost you if you don't have it in place? Because when I think about like my granddad, for example, he did not have it in place, and I am 100% confident it would have not been in place. And so even if our family would have succeeded and he would have, passed it on roughly to the next generation, guarantee you my dad and his siblings, there would have been lawsuits that are going to cost a hell of a lot more than 20 to 50K. We've had customers, one specifically up in the Northeast, that's over $600,000 in attorney bills because he's been in lawsuits with his cousins and siblings for the past 10 years. Right. So the cost of not doing this, it's so much more dramatic and higher than making the investment.
Well, and Jace, help me out here too. And I get it, but if your accounting bill is 40K and you have $40 million in assets, isn't that wonderful, problem to have?
Oh yeah, absolutely. To me,
why is that hard though? Why is that hard to write that check?
It depends on where. Again, goes back to the growth of the person, right? So for example, like with me, for example, $4,000 10 years ago to me and my wife, that was a ton of money, right? That was a lot of money for us versus today, just our payroll for Legacy Farmer, we have over 40 people. So you guys can do the math and imagine what that payroll is today, right? Okay. So a hell of a lot higher than $4,000 was. So anyways, I share all that because as you build the business to that level and to that caliber, the numbers and what they mean to you, it just starts to change, right? And again, it's not because you're better than other people or you're thinking out of heart. It's just you just evolve, right? And so especially with some of these bigger operations, I mean, shoot, they could have $2 million going through their account per month, on different things. So it's just how you think about the business, and that's going to evolve as it gets bigger.
You probably burned through $4,000 on this call, and you're not even sweating any kind of bullets.
Well, I mean, there's some sweating happening, but it's definitely $4,000 isn't going to do it. Yeah.
That's so true, though. And I think you got to level up. And honestly, to me, the best value is in coaching and getting better. It's just so if we end this poll and we share the results here, we can see that half the audience could use help with all these things. And that's where our panel. The panel today is free, so ask them whatever you want. You got 6 minutes. But no, it's amazing to have you guys together. I love the work that you're all doing. Jace, it seems like I wanted to say when I was thinking about these levels, could this be fun? Why can't this be fun?
Oh, absolutely. Cool? Yeah. So, like with me, for example, again, this entire process too is kind of built off of my own experience and something that my mentors led me through over the past decade as well. I can't tell you guys how much how much peace it brings me to know that my estate plan is set up, right? I actually have my full plan set up, and I have a wife and 4 daughters. So, if something happened to me tomorrow, everybody's set up. I cannot tell you the amount of relief I got from just getting to that stage. And also too, if I did pass away, my wife knows exactly where to find everything, all the insurance documents, all the life insurance policies, everything for the business and things there, and is set up there. So it takes work to get there, but I can tell you once you get to the destination in that journey, it's going to be well worth it, and you're going to be a different person because of it going forward.
I love it. Yeah, that's awesome, the work that you're doing. And yeah, we all have work to do in this department for sure. And it's a process. So I love how you've laid it out. Jace, in the end, what does legacy mean for you?
That's tough for me. You know what I mean? So, because I've portrayed it to people this way, even all of our customers and stuff like that, which the business has gotten, big enough to where I don't work directly with customers anymore. We have our team to do that. But I think about all the families that we're trying to impact, and like legacy to me is making sure that the work that we're doing here is going to carry on after I do pass away. But also too, how many of our customers or something like that, if something happened to Jace and I passed away, how many people would show up at my funeral? Like, how many people can I have enough impact to where people would drive or travel thousands of miles to come to my funeral? You know what I mean? So that's kind of how it's probably a different perspective there, but that's kind of how I grade it, because I think about like my granddad, for example, was focused on monetary things and assets and just building his balance sheet and all this type of stuff, and was passing on all these assets to the kids there. And the guy died with nothing. Even his last life insurance policy, the bank had it as collateral, and rightfully so. Life insurance policy went to the bank to clear up the last of his debt that they had there. So the guy built this entire thing, walked away with nothing, but also too, the family was kind of separated because of it, right? Of what happened there too. So again, taking lessons from his life and everything, definitely don't want my legacy to be the same.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a great place to end it. Jolene, final words from you, and how do we get a hold of you and make use of your wonderful resources at Farm Credit Canada?
Yeah, you can just reach out to any one of your field offices, FCC field offices, and let them know you're looking for some advisory advice or transition advice and help, and they can connect you to a business advisor in the area. There are 11 of us across the country. So lots of opportunities.
I'm sure you love to get those calls.
We do. We love it. So, and really just get started. And you don't have to do it alone. I think that's the other piece of advice that I really want people to hear is it's going to feel overwhelming, and you don't have to be doing it alone.
That's wonderful to hear for sure. Wade, what do you think? What's your final takeaways here, and how do people get a hold of you?
Hey, get a hold of Hammond Realty. They'll set you up, whether it's myself or one of my coworkers. I think there's 11 of us at the moment. We're all about helping the client. And at the end of the day, if the client's happy, we're happy in whatever fashion they need us to come out there. If you have a strategic plan, that's great. If you don't have one, we'll come and help you get one. And we'll be bringing in people to help, like Jace, like Jolene, because they all form part of that, what we call the advisory team. And within a year or two, you'll be in such a different place. You'll wonder, why didn't I do it sooner? What was holding me back?
That's so true. Well, Jace, you built something beautiful. Congratulations. You are having an impact. I was going to ask you how people get a hold of you, but man, you're in everybody's feeds. Way to go. However you do that, you're doing it well. I think everybody's seen your handsome face pop up and you well articulated moments of inspiration in all of our feeds. But if people do want to reach you, how do they get a hold of you? Or you got a huge team.
Yeah.
40
yeah.
people.
So definitely just go to legacyfarmer.com and hit that button to contact us or apply to be in our program and everything. And that's how you get connected to our team.
Well, does anybody else but you or the key person in your organization have the financial truth? Can the farm run without that key person, whether it's you or somebody else? Is your next generation prepared to lead? Do you have the experts in place that can help you? We gave you a small example of all the wonderful people out there who are on this transition train trying to help. Jace Young, Legacy Farmer, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate you, man. We got to keep doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Keep up your good work. Jolene brought in Farm Credit Canada, doing wonderful work. I appreciate you. thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And Wade, for you and Tim, thanks for making this show possible. You guys helped to keep us on the air, and to all the audience, thanks for coming today. We're back tomorrow with sell high or sell wrong. We're going to be talking about the markets, which is one of the more advanced pieces. This is like, what was it? What are the grain markets? What level is that, Jace? Level 3, level 4?
No, that's level 2. So that's
Okay,
where we get
level 2.
to production or the make money stage, which is going to be looking at that stuff. Yep.
We're doing level 2 tomorrow. So go to growingthefuture.ca and you can register there. It'll be in your email. But hopefully that conversation was inspiring. Get a hold of one of these lovely people and get on that train. I think this, Jace, you should start a Legacy Farmer board game. This could be fun.
We certainly could. We certainly could.
All right, man. Proud of you all. Thanks so much for your